world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Thursday, the 29th of January, year of our Lord 2026. Well, today we're going to take a look at the ICE stormtroopers. We're getting pushback from everywhere. Sean Hannity is pushing back, of all things. You've got Palantir employees are pushing back on this. Of course, we've seen it from the Democrats, but it's coming from a lot of friendly fire. A lot of fire coming from real conservatives. People who aren't Trump cons. Maybe that's what we should call them. Instead of neocons, we call them Trump cons. They're a lot worse. They don't just push for foreign wars, they push for wars against the Constitution as well. So we're going to take a look at that, as well as we're going to have a close look at this assassination attempt at Ilhan Omar. Fight, fight, fight. The politicians are becoming so ridiculous, aren't they? And Tony Arterburn going to be joining us at the bottom of the hour to talk about what is going on with gold and silver. He knows more about what's going on with gold and silver, folks, than Jerome Powell does. He said there's nothing to see here. Just move on. He's whistling in the graveyard. We'll be right back. Well, we have Rand Paul took on Marco Rubio, talking about Venezuela, talking about an act of war. You know, it's kind of interesting. We see the tactics abroad, things that are supposed to help us abroad. We see them become instruments of tyranny at home, don't we? That's what James Madison said. He said the weapons of defense abroad become instruments of tyranny at home. Well, that was our foreign policy, wasn't it? If we're going to allow for the wanton murder of people without due process, and to put it mildly, an excessive use of force for the military being used as world policemen, well, then guess what? You're going to have other federal police that are going to be doing the same thing to Americans domestically. And that's really kind of what this back and forth was about. Is there going to be any restraint on the Trump cons, or are they free to do whatever they wish? And so all the fundamental principles, folks, we shouldn't be surprised at this. All the fundamental principles that we're seeing here being done by the Trump cons, the Trump administration. It's the same stuff we saw with COVID, the utter contempt for the rule of law, for individual liberties, for the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights. All the stuff that we saw in the last year of Trump is back again in the first year of Trump's second term. What a surprise. And so you had Senator Rand Paul pressing Marco Rubio yesterday on whether Trump's actions in Venezuela, in terms of kidnapping the head of a foreign country and bringing him to the United States, was that legitimate? Is it a legitimate war? And it's kind of interesting because we see both Rand Paul and Cruz. I'm wondering when we talk about this, Rand Paul has consistently been against war. And even Marco Rubio said, well, I got to hand it to you. You've been consistent on this issue regardless of who is president. Yeah, he's been consistent with Republicans and with Democrats. So good for him. I've got my differences with Rand Paul on other issues like the vaccine stuff and everything for sure. But nevertheless, let's give credit where credit is due. And he may be lining up for another run of the presidency. Certainly Ted Cruz was. Ted Cruz, in a much more cowardly way, was putting out, in his own little devious way, he was putting out feelers for running for president. There were leaked secret tapes. You can put that in air quotes, secret tapes that came out of a donor meeting. You don't think they wanted that leaked deliberately? And in the donor meeting, Ted Cruz is criticizing Trump's tariffs. And he says that he's not sufficiently in the camp of Israel. So you can guess who the donors were that were there, the people that Ted Cruz is pandering to. Nevertheless, we see Ted Cruz doing that. He's not, leaking some tapes in a speech that he gave to his donors while Rand Paul is taking these people on directly. And so Paul argued during a congressional hearing that Trump capturing Maduro in Venezuela and his wife would be considered to be an act of war if the U.S. was not behind it. Maduro was originally indicted in the U.S. in 2020 on narco-terrorism charges. He's now facing trial in New York. Paul said, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war? And so Marco Rubio says, I'll give you his response here, but Rand Paul says, now, I'm not saying that he didn't do these things. I'm just talking about due process. And you see the similarity here? We're not saying that these people that ICE is looking for deserve to be here. We're not saying they don't deserve to be in jail. They don't deserve to be taken out of the country. But as Sean Hannity pointed out, and Joe Scarborough said, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Sean Hannity on something. What they're talking about is there's ways to do this without the kind of violent escalation, chaos, and thumbing their nose at the rule of law and the Constitution. There's many ways that this approach could be handled. How do we get to the point where we've got to be in one camp or the other? One camp says, we're going to be the United Somalis of America. We're going to just let everybody come here and live off of us. And the other one says, no, we're going to have a police state. Is there some other alternative to that? I say there is. And even Sean Hannity is saying that there is. So here's this clip of Rand Paul and Marco Rubio.
Our founders debated extensively over which branch of government should have the power to declare or initiate war. Virtually unanimously, they decided, and what was entered into the Constitution was that the declaration or initiation of war would be the power of Congress. Now, we have many advocates, many of whom are here today, who have been advocates for an expansive notion of presidential power. They often argue that wars are not really wars, that they're kinetic actions or drug busts. I think, though, if you reverse the circumstances, it becomes very difficult for these arguments to hold up. So I would ask you, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
Well, I think your question is about and I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career. So let me, no matter who's in charge. So I will point to two things. The first is it's hard for us to conceive that an operation that lasted about 4.5 hours and was a law enforcement operation to capture someone we don't recognize as a head of state, indicted in the United States, wanted with a $50 million bounty.
My question would be, if it only took 4 hours to take our president, it's very short, nobody dies on the other side, nobody dies on our side, it's perfect. Would it be an act of war?
We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere close to the constitutional definition of war.
But would it be an act of war if someone did it to us? Nobody dies, few casualties, they're in and out. Boom, it's a perfect military operation. Would that be an act of war? Of course it would be an act of war. I'm probably the most anti-war person in the Senate, and I would vote to declare war if someone invaded our country and took our president. So I think we need to at least acknowledge this is a one-way argument. One-way arguments that don't rebound, that you can't apply to yourselves, that cannot be universally applicable are bad arguments.
Yeah, and so what Marco Rubio is saying, well, there's no equivalency here. Why? Well, because we're powerful. So we're not equal to anybody else. There's a different rule for us. As a matter of fact, there's no rules for us. And he's not just implying that. We've seen that said over and over again by Stephen Miller, openly talking about that in terms of Greenland and Denmark, not just in terms of Venezuela. And we see this being done in terms of domestic policy as well with ICE. So Paul said, what I'm saying is that our arguments are empty then. The drug bust really isn't an argument. It's a ruse. The war argument, it's not a war, and it is a war, saying both of those things, that is a ruse. He said it's not a real argument. We do what we do because we have the force, we have the might. We do it because it's in our interest. So we wouldn't let anybody come in and bomb us and blockade us and take our president. We've had arguments about legitimate and illegitimate presidents. We've had arguments about bad elections and rigged elections. And so there's all these same kind of arguments that we've had in our country that they've had in Venezuela. And so that's the bottom law, folks. It's the disregard for law and morality. They're used as weapons abroad, right? We don't care about what's happening abroad, and so we bring that same attitude back home. These are people saying, we have to defend our borders, and we have to get rid of these illegal immigrants. And yet, the people who are so pro-border, and I'm pro-border, but I don't see how you can support political borders when you don't support political boundaries. You have political boundaries. You don't have the right to be in office. You don't have the authority to be in office if you're not going to be bound by the boundaries that are outlined in the Constitution. So shut up about borders if you're not going to follow boundaries in your own country. That's where we are, folks. That's why I begin with that as well. And so we have Minnesota's chief judge, the one that is going to war with Trump on the ICE issue. As a matter of fact, he has demanded that tomorrow the head of ICE come to his court and explain why he is disregarding the judge's orders. And it's kind of telling to see the way Homeland Security's Assistant Secretary, Tricia McLaughlin, the contempt that she has for this judge and really for the rule of law. It's also interesting to see that this guy is a conservative, many people say. He's a low-key George W. Bush appointee, confronting Trump's immigration tactics, ordering the head of ICE to come to his room and to explain in his courtroom why they're ignoring what he said in terms of following reasonable procedures. This is a guy who clerked twice for Scalia. This is a guy who fought for Robert Bork, perhaps the most conservative judge that's been nominated in my lifetime for the Supreme Court. And so this is a guy for whom the rule of law stands large. In other words, a real conservative, if you look at it from that standpoint. I don't know politically who he votes for. They said, well, we've seen him doing this and that with this group. And he left law practice for a while and taught at Notre Dame University, where Amy Coney Barrett went. And he endorsed her for Supreme Court judge. But of course, we all make mistakes. I got to say, she looked good on paper to me. And yet, we can see where she is. She doesn't really grasp or care much for the Constitution or originality. But this guy, 65, as he's doing this, of course, he's been anybody who pushes back against Trump's arbitrary dictates and whatever he's doing has got to be a leftist, right? This is the danger of this tribalism. It's like I said, these people are not going to leave us alone because we're not Republican and not Democrat. They're going to come after us. Well, you must be the other side, right? You're either with us or you're the enemy. You're either with us or you're a terrorist. We're seeing a lot of that now with the videotape that came out yesterday of Alex Preddy. First, it came out that he had rib broken by an encounter with ICE. And I don't know if that was the same video as this other one. I didn't really pay much attention to it because it's not germane to the killing. It's not germane to it. On that particular incident, he's outraged. He's yelling and screaming. He's combative. He kicks the car that the ICE agents ran and kicks out the tail light. I was surprised it's that easy. Kicking that cars are made out of plastic now. It's amazing. But he did significant damage to it. And they said, see, he's a criminal. And you could see that he had a gun that was in his, tucked into the back of his waistband in his pants, just like he did when they took it out and killed him the other day. But that's not what they did with his one. And it was visible in this particular one. And so you got all these conservatives saying, see, he's a terrorist. He's a violent, he's looking for a fight. Well, I got to say, if you go back to January the 6th, right? We've seen the pictures of the Democrats that did the same thing. The Democrats did the same thing to demonize everybody that was there on January the 6th. And they did it without showing any context. I mean, if you just show it after somebody's been enraged because they've been pushed, shoved, knocked to the ground, tear gassed, and then they lose it and fight back. Oh, now I'm justified in killing you. If you, depending on where you start this video, you can tell whatever you want to say about the events. We've had a lot of people who were there on January the 6th who said the Capitol Police started this, kicked this off, escalated it. I've been at a lot of demonstrations. I've seen that type of thing happening over and over again. I can easily believe that's what happened. And we do have video footage that would indicate that. And so we don't know what happened before this that got him so outraged about this. And it's not to excuse it, right? What he did was still wrong. And it's not to excuse what the people on January the 6th did. They get into a fight with the police. They break out windows. They commit vandalism, property destruction, go to jail. However, the problem with January the 6th was the excessive punishment. I never had a problem with the people who were fighting, regardless of what the provocation was. You start fighting and destroying property, you go to jail. But not for decades. And they don't get a chance to torture you in jail. And so all of this stuff is so excessive. And if you get upset with the cops and you speak back to them because they're angry that you're filming them, that's not a license for them to kill you. That's why we have the clause about excessive punishment. That's why we have the clause about due process. Now, on January the 6th, what the Democrats did was they took these videos of people who were fighting, took them without the entire context, and they said, okay, these people are violent revolutionaries, and everybody there is a violent revolutionary. Do you see the conservative tribe doing that now as well? I shouldn't say the conservative tribe. The Trump cons are doing that now. They're painting everybody with the same brush. And then they're demanding that there should be no limits to the punishment that's inflicted on people. It needs to be absolute, including lifetime in prison for the Democrats or taking your life if you're Republicans, right? And so that's the issue here. Keeping this stuff in perspective, keeping it within the Constitution and due process, keeping a balance with it, that's the challenge that's here. Yes, there were some things that were done wrong, things that should even be punished that he did wrong. Doesn't entitle them to kill him at all. And so when you look at this judge who's pushing back on these confrontational tactics from ICE, again, Todd Lyons, what an appropriate name for somebody that's there as part of the Trump con administration with ICE. Give me that guy whose name was Lyon. I could use him. Kristi Noem is there. That's her middle name, I guess, as well as this Tricia McLaughlin. So Judge Schlitz, is just another activist judge who is clearly more concerned about politics than the safety of Minnesotans, said Tricia McLaughlin. She doesn't care about the safety of people in Minnesota. Does this judge really think that Director Lyons should take time out of his day leading ICE to target the worst of the worst criminal illegals, including murderers, rapists, pedophiles, terrorists in our country, to testify at a hearing for one illegal alien removal proceedings? This is a woman who lied when they took that elderly man who had been here for 35 years from Laos, when they invaded his home like some kind of a dystopian science fiction movie like Brazil, drug him out in his underwear. He grabbed a blanket as he was going out into 10-degree weather, and then drove him around for an hour before they could verify who they even had. And she comes back and says, yeah, they were looking for some rapists and pedophiles and all this, whatever, right? And shows a picture of two guys that never lived there. They said, we don't know who these people are. And even if they had lived there, they were not there then. And they're in their 20s, and this guy's in his 60s, I think. Looking at him, I mean, he might be late 50s, who knows? But all of it was a lie. That was a lie that was sold by this same woman, Tricia McLaughlin. So one person said, actually, this is Politico. Politico says, Schlitz is perhaps an unlikely figure. He carved his professional identity in traditional conservative circles. See, Politico thinks that Trump is a conservative. He's not a conservative. He's a New York Democrat. And these authoritarian Nazis around him are not conservatives either. We need to come up with a new name. I like Trump cons, like neocons. So he advocated for Robert Bork. Like I said before, he clerked for Scalia twice. The Senate confirmed him unanimously. One person who's a law professor and was a former federal prosecutor, Mark Osler, said he comes from a traditionally conservative point of view, but he's a rule of law guy. Imagine that. Of course, if you're a rule of law guy, you're going to have conflict with the Trump cons. He's been regarded as a rock-solid, generally conservative judge on the bench, but with that comes things other than loyalty to this administration, because this administration has no loyalty to the rule of law. And so we have, as people are starting to push back against this, here's Arlington County Board Chair says ICE, if you see ICE in Arlington, call 911. He said, and I disagree with his position about immigrants, he said, to our immigrant neighbors, you belong in Arlington. No, they don't. We need to end the welfare magnet, but we need to do this with due process. We need to do it humanely, orderly, and remove them, and there's ways to do that. And he said, you are a part of this community. Well, no, actually, they should not be voting, and they should not be getting money either. You know, when we talk about immigrants, I don't think legal immigrants ought to be able to get any taxpayer money. I think one of the conditions of becoming an American citizen is that you're going to declare your independence from government and that you're not going to come here as a dependent. Most countries in the world have a requirement that you can show that you can support yourself and your family before you're allowed to immigrate to a country. We should be doing that as well.
I think an interesting thing to point out is that what's going on with the fraud with Somalians in Minnesota is likely going on with every immigrant group everywhere they are. Maybe not to that scale, but it's probably happening. And I think it's just that the people involved are so incredibly dumb and incompetent that it's more obvious there.
Well, it's when you bring in a large group of people as a community rather than, coming across the border, they're coming in as individuals or whatever. Again, we've created these drug gangs and they're dangerous and we should be aware of that and we should deal with that. But that's a different thing. And again, you want to know who you're coming after. You just don't start going door to door, grabbing people and threatening people and beating them up.
It's also worth pointing out that the whole melting pot thing has never been true. It never works at scale. Small numbers of different communities, different people can be integrated into a society, but large numbers cannot.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting that quote at the bottom of the Statue of Liberty was written by a Marxist playwright. So take that with a grain of salt. We should melt that thing down.
You'd always have like Chinatown. You still see Chinatown. And when you had a lot of people coming in from Italy, you'd have Little Italy. People would come together. They would hang together as an ethnic group, a cultural group, and that type of thing. And that's fine. But as you pointed out, if you're going to bring in tens of thousands of people and put them in one area, and then they get started on massive amounts of money from the federal government, a couple of $1 billion, right? It's like, well, there's this large pot of money there. We might as well go get it. That's a great way to train them. And what are the Trump cons doing about this? They are going to increase that. Right now, the pot of gold for refugees that acts as a magnet for them to come here is $6 billion. Trump and Mike Johnson and the GOP want to increase that by $5 billion. That's an 80% increase that they want to do for that. So ICE's approach is designed to provoke right now and to seek out conflict. I agree with that. I don't agree with what he says about citizenship. And one of the reasons that he's saying that, our immigrant neighbors, you belong to this community, blah, blah, blah. He's saying that because that's 22% of the people in that community. That's enough to keep him in office. And that's an aspect of this as well that we should talk about. And so, as I said yesterday, ICE's approach is designed to provoke right now and to seek out conflict. And here's the numbers. For the previous 5 years, each year the number of ICE and Border Patrol shootings would be anywhere from 0 to 5. Except this year, the first year of Trump where they are seeking out conflict, we've had not 0 to 5, we've had 28 shootings and 8 people killed by ICE. So they point out they think that the Trump administration appears intent on converting law enforcement into military intervention. I agree. with all the trappings and appearance and the posture of some sort of regime change. And you can see this when you look at the pictures. There's one in particular, a guy who was in the military. I think he's a Marine. He's in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And he said, look at this. Pull up that picture, Travis. It's a couple of articles down. Yeah, the height of close combat weaponry is on this woman's doorstep. In this picture, you've got, I count, 7 people lined up. And you got one lady at the door. It's a woman at the door. They got 7 guys there, all lined up with body armor and weapons for combat, for house-to-house combat. If that isn't the excessive use of force. In 1980, when Karen and I went to the UK, went to England for our honeymoon, we were very impressed with the way the Bobbies conducted themselves. They've now become Americanized. But back then, they would go as Roger, what's the guy's name? Bobbies on bicycles 2x2. England swings like a pendulum too. Anyway, I can't remember the last name of the songwriter, but you probably remember who it is. I wanted to say Roger Moore, and it's like, no, it's not Roger Moore. He's British. Anyway, the American songwriter. But that's the way they would go 2x2. They had radios in case something really got bad. Oh, and they had whistles, those horrible whistles that really set off ice. And they were very polite to everybody. You start getting real horsey when you got a gun, when you got guns slung on, and when you got body armor and you got weapons to fight a war. It completely changes your attitude. And instead of walking a beat, you start driving a car, which is what's happening in the UK with law enforcement there as well.
This picture is killing me. There's 8 guys in this photo.
Yeah, and
there's
probably more than
armed.
that. Yeah, 7 or 8 guys there confronting a woman who answers the door. What's going on here? And you can see part of one guy there. So, how many more people are out of frame in that picture?
I'm just imagining them all piling out of a clown car right now. Just
Keystone Cops. Except these guys are really dangerous. Well, there's an article on World Magazine, Keeping ICE Within the Law.
Oh, also, Right Overture says it was Roger Miller that wrote and sung that song.
Thank you. I knew it Roger something, yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for putting that in. Our Constitution doesn't allow federal agents to enter homes forcibly without a judicial warrant. How did we get here? Well, we accepted the idea that even if they got a warrant, they can enter forcibly without even knocking. They can kick the door in and come in shooting. Isn't that an abomination? But notice how that's now become accepted practice. Now they're just saying, wait a minute, you need a warrant to kick somebody's door in without a knocking even. And now Homeland Security says, no, we don't need a warrant. We can do that anytime we want. We can do a full-on military raid onto your house anytime we want without a warrant from a judge. We will generate our own warrant internally. Our own organization will do it. A defining feature of the American experiment is that citizens are not meant to live in fear of their own government. The Constitution was written against the backdrop of arbitrary arrests, general warrants, and the abuse of unchecked government power with the express purpose of ensuring that the government would secure the rights of the people rather than endanger them. As a result, Americans have not historically lived under the fear that they might be taken from their homes at the discretion of a vengeful, petty, or overzealous political authority. I'm looking at you, Trump cons. As a matter of fact, that's what that guy was saying that I did agree with. He said, I'm a city councilor here, but I live in fear of these people. You never know what they're going to do. They have absolute immunity to do whatever they wish, no matter how violent. And so if you don't think that that describes Democrats as well as the anti-Second Amendment Trump neocons, because, Trump is a New York City Democrat, you need to think about where this is headed. He says, yes, law enforcement has always existed, but its power has always been restrained in America. The Fourth Amendment was adopted precisely to prohibit arrests and detentions based on mere suspicion or official convenience. In America, suspicion is insufficient. The government must provide evidence and submit itself to legal restraint before it can deprive someone of liberty. And again, when we look at the Declaration of Independence, 250th anniversary this year, as they began a long train of abuses, and that's how we got here, folks. It's been a long train running. It began with things like RICO statutes, where we can take everything from you before we even start the trial. That metastasized into civil asset forfeiture, where we take everything from you without even charging you with a crime, let alone convicting you. So with RICO, we charge you with a crime, then we take everything you got. Then you go to civil asset forfeiture. Well, we don't even have to charge you with a crime. We're going to charge your property with a crime. And there'll be no due process, right? And then we go from that to the no-knock drug raids, and now we go to the no-knock drug raids with no warrant. It's a long train of abuses. And you can see that Trump is fully on board with this, as he was talking in the first administration. Take the gun and do the due process later. Well, they're not going to do any due process. We're going to take a quick break here because I really do want to, and we'll come back to this, but I want to talk to Tony about what's going on with gold. We've got a couple of questions from people for Tony, and if you got any, you can give them to us, and we will pass those on to him.
Yeah, real quick before we go to Tony, I do want to read these comments. Sorry
Sure,
to
go
make
ahead.
him wait. North American House Hippo says, please remind David, now that Trump is back from Davos, March 13th falls on a Friday again this year.
Oh, great. Will that be when he declares martial law for real? The other was medical martial law.
This time,
Yeah.
martial law to electric boogaloo. Guard Goldsmith says, like Al Gore, when he made campaign calls from the White House, which was illegal, he said there was no controlling legal authority.
That's
Classic.
right.
And of course, you can find Guard Goldsmith at Liberty Conspiracy on Rumble
I agree.
and on Substack. North American House Hippo also said, Kristi Noem was so mad, she grabbed her gun and headed straight for the Washington Animal Shelter to blow off some steam.
I've seen these bots are so horrible on X. I saw several people put up, I'm so glad that we got Kristi Noem as our homeland thing. And it wasn't sarcasm. And it was that picture where she's standing there with two guys. They've got her all decked out in the Barbie gear, you know, she's dressed up like G.I. Joe uniform and everything. She's pointing the gun at that guy's head and holding it really awkwardly and pointing the barrel at the guy's head standing on her left. And I thought, wow, this is the level of political discourse that you get on social media anymore. It's pathetic.
Yeah, I find it, even those real guys, even if they're not bots, they're like, oh, man, she holds guns. Women who like guns. Okay, whatever.
She likes them even though she's never, hopefully, fired one.
Yeah.
Well, she did shoot her dogs with it.
I don't
right?
know. I find it very strange. Like, if you're a woman and you're really into guns, that's cool for you. That's fine. But also, if you're a guy that's like, I want a woman that drinks beer, likes football, shoots guns, like, why don't you just go hang out with your guy friends, man?
Maybe there's some trannies you'd be interested in. Have you ever talked to Bruce Gender, you know?
And Con Thing, thank you so much for the tip. We appreciate
Yes,
it. He
thank
says,
you.
I just laughed so hard listening to the Censored Salenti interview. Great tonal beeps. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I didn't know you put beeps in it, but
We
we
have people that carry it on different radio, so I have to censor it. Otherwise, they get into trouble.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I miss some, and I feel really bad about that.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Tony Ardman. We've gone over a few minutes here, but we'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Well, welcome back. And joining us now is Tony Ardman, and he is at the tip of the spear of the news right now because the big news is what is happening to gold and what is happening to the dollar. And we just had Jerome Powell say, oh, there's no problem with the dollar. That's what I said at the top of the hour. I said, we're have Tony Arterburn on. He knows a lot more than Jerome Powell, or, the alternative is that Jerome Powell knows a lot more than he's telling you. He's not being honest with anybody. So Goldman Sachs is saying we're looking at the demise of the dollar, and it's just getting started, is what they said. And last time we talked a week ago on Thursday, what was the price of gold? Was it about 4,800, 4,700? What was it? It's hard to remember.
Somewhere around 4,800 and some change, and it's bounced around a little bit, so it's hard to be exact. But yeah, It was just we were nearing 5,000. That was the big milestone. Now that's completely off the table. We're going to talk about $6,000 gold, it appears, and I think we've hit all-time highs every single day, even over the weekend.
That was something that was crazy. I saw it on Monday. I thought, that can't be right. They said 5,100. Is that a projection from one of these banks? It's like, no, that's what it hit on Monday. And I was like, what?
Right.
And then, the next couple of days later, I see it's like up at 5,400, 5,500. Did it get as high as 5,800? I think I saw that somewhere momentarily.
It may be on the futures. As far as spot price, I think we've gone over 55 and then we dropped back down. But we're moving in new territory, David. None of these, even the simulations and the big intel that I follow, they haven't called this. This is something completely different. I would say that it's funny. Jerome Powell reminds me of Baghdad Bob. Remember Saddam's his press secretary, or whatever you would call him, his chief minister of information, whatever it was, and he would say, they're not here, the Americans aren't here, they're rolling through Baghdad, in real time, and he's like, we've had no contact. And
it doesn't matter what you're talking about with this administration, they're all Baghdad Bob. I mean, it's whatever the topic is, they give you a Baghdad Bob line, don't they? It's crazy.
Yeah, fiat currency, I think, is a barbarous relic.
Yeah.
In our time, we're seeing John Maynard Keynes had it in reverse.
We could call it a barbarous bubble, I guess, is maybe our own little take on this. We had Tucker Carlson talking to Peter Schiff about Bitcoin, whether it ought to be the new global reserve currency. Of course, Peter Schiff has heaped nothing but scorn on Bitcoin and crypto. There's been this ongoing war. I would say right now is looking pretty good for Peter Schiff's point of view.
Well, I'd say so. Yeah. And I think Bitcoin right now is probably the dark horse. It's just out there doing what it does. It's more like a stable coin at this point. I mean, it's still trading at 85,000 a coin, which is insane if you know its history. When I got into Bitcoin, it was $400. That was in 2016. That's when I first saw the usage of Bitcoin ATMs, and then it got me interested. That's the genesis of Wise Wolf. So I've been around a long time in Bitcoin to say it's lagging, but I think all bets are off. Everything's being repriced. Bitcoin will probably go last because you got to remember gold and silver are the old historical money. They're tied to the human experience. It's it's biblical. It's inside of our tradition. So it's obviously going to go first. And I see a lot of price predictions. I think some of them are completely irresponsible from some of these commentators, especially in my space. I don't like to make price predictions, but I do think that there's something else is happening, David. And I've been running, just like for my own curiosity, running the simulations on what the price of gold would need to be if the major central banks wanted to reprice their currencies in gold. And it looks like it's far north of what it is now. But if you take their gold holdings and you wanted to reprice it for their into the money supply, it's in north of 35, 40,000 an ounce. And I'm not saying that's where we're going, but something is afoot. If you wanted to reprice something, this is how you would do it. And the U.S. for so long, as we've covered this, has been and had an active role, especially the central bank and the Fed, of suppressing the price. So I don't think they can do that anymore. And I think that's clearly showing up in the price of silver, not just gold, but silver is following gold, and gold's being repriced, silver's being repriced, and nothing seems to be a governor on that anymore.
That's right. And, it's kind of interesting because when you look at, what is the financial system going to go to? Well, the Trump administration is definitely pushing toward a stable coin, just like the EU and other places that just want to do CBDC. Their Trump administration is trying to pretend it's something different than CBDC. But the Tether and these stable coins, as so-called stable coins, are really just a relabeled CBDC. It has a kind of private-public partnership aspect to it, a kind of fascism, corruption type of thing, as you would expect from the Trump administration. It also helps them to pretend that it's not the same as CBDC, but it's a way for them and their buddies to make money as well. But we just saw Tether just disappear $180 million something out of several wallets, just froze it, seize it, and freeze it and seize it is what they do, right? And that's a warning to everybody, I think. And as we look at how things are changing, you and I have talked for a long time about the warning about paper gold and paper silver. We don't know if that stuff is for real either. We don't know if they've really got the gold or silver that's there. And when push comes to shove, we may find out that they don't have it, in which case the shares that you got in those companies off the Shanghai Gold Exchange would just plummet if confidence disappears. You are not buying a tenth of an ounce of gold or silver. What you're buying is shares in a company that promises that they're going to be accumulating gold and silver. So physical possession, whether you're talking about the so-called stable coins, which are not stable and they're not coins, and they're the way that they can freeze and seize anything that you've got by design. That was something that was in the Genius Act that Trump put through there. So whether you're talking about that or you're talking about paper, gold, or silver, or any kind of tokenized derivative schemes that are coming out of Wall Street, be very careful about that. And the approach that you want to take is with physical gold and physical silver. That's why what you do, Tony, is so important.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the term is counterparty risk, and
Yeah.
that used to be a lot more acceptable. And it's funny because the institutions are going first. I always thought it would be the other way around. I thought that the people would start to lose faith in the system and rebel against it from the bottom up. And some of that is happening. I mean, I think it's more widespread than it's ever been in my lifetime, especially since 1971, that people are skeptical of the monetary system. But this has started governmentally across the world. It's an international phenomenon of mistrust and reallocation of funds and resources. And we covered this a few months ago, David. I thought it was big news that they have the storage for gold, physical gold, not only in Shanghai, that they're starting new storage facilities and moving the exchange there. I know JP Morgan is taking their gold desks there, but also in Hong Kong. I thought that was big news. And they're building, massive storage facilities just outside the airport for physical storage. So it's not, the firms that used to control so much of the paper market, and that was just seen, hey, if you wanted a hand in, or do something in gold or silver, and as far as following the price or the spot, this is what you would get into. There's not a lot of risk here. You don't have to hold the gold or store it anywhere. You just buy in at spot and you can cash out. Of course, they never pay you in gold or silver through any of those funds. They would pay you in fiat if you cashed out, because it's just priced against the spot or whatever those metals were. And of course, there's storage is expensive, all the rest. But I think I started to see a trend about 3 years ago, especially after the sanctions on Russia backfired. There was this big blowback that happened with the ruble rebounding, and they started doing those cross-border payments with not only gold, but petroleum and other things and direct trades with China and India. And I started thinking, this is going to be interesting as the de-dollarization continues. I started watching these big trades going on that were multinational corporations and governments starting to pull, more gold into the system physically and then move it around. The repatriation of gold, I thought it was a big story that didn't get covered the way it should. A lot of these countries.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that from Germany this last week.
Yes.
It's not the majority position there yet, but you've had a lot of people from several different parties, because they have more than two parties there, just as they do in most places other than the U.S. But anyway, a lot of politicians there are saying, we got to get it back. We can't trust the Federal Reserve. And so if that's their position, they can't trust the Federal Reserve. And I don't trust the Federal Reserve either, but I don't think they're going to disappear Germany's gold. But if that's their position, if Germany is worried about the Federal Reserve's vaults in terms of holding gold, maybe you ought to think twice about putting your money into paper gold and paper silver, hoping that the Chinese have got the actual stuff to back up what they're selling you in their vaults in Shanghai. You might get shanghaied with all this stuff, right?
I think it's inevitable. There's going to be a cascading series of events, I believe, that will further uh, expose the lack of accountability here in the next 12 months. I think something's going to break because these prices expose it. If everything's going chopping sideways or silver's boring the way it's been my entire life, if it's been like, from 1980, it hit this peak at 52. It took 45 years for it to break that, and then once it broke it, it just off to the races. You got to remember, we had these periods like 2011 where silver got close to 50 or trading at 50 and then fell back down because the Fed was able to step in and calm things down. Ben Bernanke was the key figure there. He's like, wait, this isn't going to happen again. We're not going to do more TARP funds. We're not going to do massive QE or bailout things, and it calmed the markets down. Those days are never coming back.
No.
And we're seeing this is the culmination, all those years of being boring, all of those paper trades that were going on, and active suppression, David. I mean, I've seen it in real time in my business. I've seen the suppression through Wall Street, and they can't do it anymore. I just don't think they have the resources or the ability to cover the spread or do anything on selling off major. So I think the race is on for the repricing.
So it was boring, and now we're living in interesting times.
That's right.
Exactly.
It was very boring.
It's kind of interesting. This quote on Kitco, the headline, Powell dismisses gold's rally above 5,300. He says the Fed is not losing credibility. And everybody laughs.
Baghdad Bob moment.
Well, imagine the quote unquote credibility when Trump takes it over, and he is the entire Fed, and he's going to tell everybody what to do. That's when you're going to see credibility flushed out the toilet right there. But when you're talking about interesting times and the radical changes, we got a comment here from North American House Hippo. He says, Mike Shedlott said a couple of years ago that if gold ever hit 10,000 and silver was hundreds of dollars, he said it would never happen. But if it did, you wouldn't want to leave your house. What's your comment about that, Tony?
Well, I think you'd need a little bit higher number. Would we blink right now if gold went to 6,000? And that's the rest of the populace. I mean, obviously we're in a unique niche space of people paying attention, but we're talking about this. The vast majority of people don't really know like the historical context of, silver's, at $118 an ounce or whatever it is today. How insane that is given our timeline.
That's right.
So I think that a lot of things have to catch up. I mean, gold could go to 10,000 in the next year. Would it break the system? Probably not. There's a long way to go in the repricing of all this. And what does that even mean? I mean, really, for you to price things in dollars anymore, do we really know the true extent of the devaluation that's gone on? Are we just so psychologically programmed to give these things value that we continue to do that? And I think that metric that's what's being worked out right now. We're in undiscovered country. We're in new pricing territory that's never happened before because we've never had. I mean, nothing can go back and you can't really historically overlay what we've done in the last 50 plus years with our currency. It's never truly gone on or gotten that big. We never had a fiat currency that was worldwide in everything and then being, de-dollarized it rapidly. So we've never seen that before. So I don't know what pricing strategy. I would say if silver, like some of these yahoos on I see a lot of these commentators, people that want to get clicks, and they'll put on $5,000 silver, whatever. I see those people all the time. If you're at that amount, maybe you can't go outside. At a certain level, it doesn't matter. At a certain level, that repricing in dollars is kind of absurd.
And when you look at the global debt, I mean, that's the point that Ray Dalio was making at Davos. He said, maybe we're not looking at de-dollarization, but we're looking at de-fiatization.
Yes.
And he sees that as something that is, certainly it would de-dollarize things, but it'd be much broader than that because it would include all these other fiat currencies like the euro and all these other national currencies that are out there. When you look at the massive amount of debt that is there and how it just keeps expanding with all that. Got another comment here from Steve Evans. He said, "Can you sell metals? Is it all buy and hold?" He says, "I'm holding. Ask Tony if he isn't buying silver. Health Impact News thinks that many people aren't buying, or many gold and silver dealers aren't buying."
Yeah, I know why they're not, but we're still buying. As a matter of fact, as soon as we're done with the broadcast, I'm going to send out prices. But I'm still buying, and I have to balance between the percentages that I'll buy back for and my risk, and also being professional and making sure people get a good deal. It's a balancing act at this point.
Well, like I said last week, before we saw this explosion this week in the price of metals, I don't know how you do it. I mean, you're already operating in a hyperinflation economy, the type of thing we've always talked about in Argentina or Nazi Germany or whatever, pre-Nazi Germany, where, the price of the commodity is jumping massive amounts during the day, each day. How do you operate in something like that? I don't know.
I have the shop in Missouri and then I have the shop in Texas. And look, my son's here in Texas with me, and I'm broadcasting out of we're ice stand. We've been out closed for days, by the way, which has given us a little bit of breathing room. And Branson, yesterday when I reopened, I said, "Look, let's just pack Wolfpack packages. We can still sell, but we're not going to buy." And that was the only time in the history of my shop, or since Wise Wolf, where I just gave a blanket order, we're not going to buy anything. And because my people needed to work, they've been snowed in for days. So today we're going to be buying again. And, the difficulty is you have to look at every single thing that you buy, or every docket of things. I have to figure out where I'm going to source and where I'm going to sell it. A lot of times this gets, thank goodness, I've been able to pass on stuff like that to Wolfpack people. Any of the Wolfpack members have been getting, like, if you do Constitutional Wolf, you're getting stuff at melt. So like I can still buy 90% US silver, which most dealers and then refiners aren't buying. So I really have no, except for one place, but it takes 3 weeks to get paid, anywhere to take 90% silver. But that doesn't mean that 90% is not a good long-term hold. As a matter of fact, I think it's one of the best upside things you can be doing right now. And people, I think, are confusing. They're like, "Well, I held this silver all this time. Why can't I sell now?" Well, you're talking about a bottleneck system where, countless people are trying to do the same thing that you did. You need to just let it calm itself out. And then prices for the percentages that for buying will rise again. But this market is, there's nowhere for me to sell sterling silver. Does that mean sterling silver, like flatware and knives and jewelry and things? Does that mean that is not worth anything? Of course not. It just means that the refiners are overloaded, dealers are overloaded. There's no liquidity right now, but if you give it enough time, it will just sort itself out. And I would say, the rush to sell. If I'm somebody that's held silver a long time, you got a few options, but honestly, I'd want to see where the price goes and let things settle out, because I think that they will, David.
We talked about this report, and I saw somebody sent it to me, and I watched it. It was at a gold and silver show. They set these things up like gun shows, and it's kind of a retail thing. You got a lot of retail sellers who are there, and then you have people come in just like they do at a gun show, and they're going to buy gold and silver and things like that. And this guy went around talking to all the different dealers, and he said, "So what's going on?" They said, "Well, nobody's buying silver. Everybody wants to sell silver." And that was last summer. Everybody wanted to sell it. And they said, yeah, the institutions can't get enough of it, but the retail trade doesn't want to buy any of it. And they're also feeling economic pressure in terms of, I need the money right now. So, it was kind of an interesting thing, especially when you look at this. Some of these people, if these dealers said, I can't buy any more right now, whatever, they're probably regretting that. And the people who sold it last summer are probably regretting it as well. It's amazing, because that was just before it took off like a rocket.
Well, and people thought that 60 was the top and 70 was the top. And I kept saying, I don't, look, I can take your stuff. I don't think this is the top. People would always ask me that. And, you know, it's part of how I stay in business is buying products. And when I stop buying, it really is there's something fundamentally wrong with the system. If I give that, you know, if I give that order to my shops to stop buying across the board, there's something terribly wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think that, you know, if you look at who's buying, that's the tell. And we do get, and we still have customers, but I get people that send me stuff, David, all the time, and they're like, "Is this how your shop is?" And they'll send me some YouTube video of some dealer somewhere going, "People are lined up around the block and they're buying all the silver I have." And I'm like, "That's not my experience in two different states or the phone. Like that's not how, you know." And my phone rings constantly. I have a full-time person just answering the phone. We try to get to every call.
That guy's
And
other business is Oriental Rugs, I guess.
And it's funny. I go, people are always asking me like, "Oh, I guess you're selling a lot of silver." No. And we can move a lot of it. The key factor I think here is that what's helped us is the dollar cost averaging. People over at Wolfpack done a great job with this. If you just let it sit there, we're going to continue to whatever the price is that week.
That's right.
And we just fill that order. I mean, I think
just look at it as a slow accumulation. As you point out, you're averaging this out over time. You don't have to sweat it that you're buying in at one point in time and maybe I got in at the wrong time or something like that. You mentioned Constitutional Wolf. You said getting people getting that at melt. What level is that on a monthly?
it's its own level. It's either 250 or 500, and you can do one time or you can put it on accumulation. And those actually you get collectibles in there because I don't have time to sort through that. But you get collectibles, you get silver dollars. And what I was saying earlier, I was on the phone with, and it's funny because we've never been in this situation before. These prices are so high that I have to reevaluate how I even look at the packages. Like, okay, I used to think, okay, we'll put XX and then I can't. You know, I remember
Save you some shipping costs there, right?
Well, you know, it doesn't. Yeah, it's a much
lighter package.
I have to figure out too. I'm like, you can't just send people one thing. You know, like I try to give some variety, but it's harder and harder. You know, if you look at a Walking Liberty or Franklin or Kennedy half dollar, I mean, David, that's like $40 a melt right now. Like that, just that half dollar. We used to be able to put that into a Lone Wolf, and it's over $40 in melt, just for the halves. And so I put a silver dollar yesterday in the Warrior Wolves, which is like 125, and I think we can squeeze out a gold back on top of it. It's just insane. And so it's harder and harder to do what we do, and then finding quality variety to put in the packs, and that's just because of the price.
I got a question for you from somebody left on X for you yesterday. It was from somebody account called Non-Identity. They said, when the U.S. dollar collapses, what happens to the money in people's bank accounts? Like Elon Musk, who says, we're not going to have any money. It's like, so why are you so hell-bent on accumulating $1 trillion net worth? But what happens to his money when the dollar becomes worthless? Everything is still valued in dollars. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and that kind of presupposes that they will still hold dollars in the last days of the dollar, like in the final act of whatever the dollar's role is right now. And I don't think the dollar is going to ultimately collapse like overnight. I don't think that it'll have something like that. I think it'll be a decline that gives people some time to exit. Those people with the golden parachutes, and you got to remember too that they have to play a certain game. They have to hold a certain amount in dollars. I believe this is the way that I think their ticket, their acceptance at the table of whatever billionaires do. I think they have to hold a certain amount of dollars in the system. So I think it probably would be an exit right beforehand. Like if you want to look closely, see where these billionaires and others are going up in this timeline to see where you should go. And I think they'll be placing more into physical assets along in the next 2 to 3 years, see massive flows out of the dollar and into, it could be even real estate or other things, but it'll be commodities.
Yeah.
And something that's even in maybe even gold backed stable coin, stuff like that.
Yeah, because it's like the dilemma that the central banks have, right? If they don't like holding the dollar, but they can't just dump it all at once, or they make their own holdings worthless. And so it has to be a gradual process to get out of that as well. And I got some more questions here for you. This is from Milutin Milankovic says, should we think about platinum? It seems low, used to be on par with gold.
Yeah, platinum really surprised me. I hadn't paid attention to it in a while. I mean, I own some platinum, and my shop has inventory of platinum just because we bought it from people and just held it. But for the longest time, I would always do, the platinum spot price. I'm like, oh, here it's 8,900. It would always be there, like in the 8,900 to 1,000 range. And then one day I looked up and it's 2,000 and it's more. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It just really surprised me. And I said, is that right? And I'd go back through and recalculate. Yeah, platinum is a good play. I don't do enough of it. I hold some of it just because, I mean, long term, you got to remember, any of these metals, if you can physically hold them and buy them at a good price, and you're not just paying some collectible fee or some nonsense, if you can get in there and just hold them long term, you're going to make out okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's real.
It's going to happen.
It's real, and people need to make things out of it. I think platinum, they need that for these catalytic converters. And although I'd be the first to say you don't need a catalytic converter, you actually have to have them in these cars. And so, as a matter of fact, when I cut mine off, took it to a shop, and I was able to sell it because of the platinum that was in it. So, yeah, there's that. Guard Goldsmith, Liberty Conspiracy, says, could Tony discuss the change in importance of the collectible quality of a gold or silver coin versus the metal content during rough economic times?
I love collectible historic coins. It's part of the interest of why I like the business that I'm in. But you have to it's like real estate. And it's like, I see a lot of interesting coins, even non-gold and silver coins. And I've bought coins from the Roman Empire at my shops, and very old coins, the Spanish silver dollars, the pieces of 8 and things like that. Pirate money. I literally bought, pirate money over the years. But you have to remember, it's just like anything else. Something is worth what somebody will pay for it. So if you're interested in historic coins or something like that, just make sure you're not going too far into the blue sky of ethereal worth. I have people call me all the time, say, I looked it up online and this quarter is worth $10,000. I'm like, well, maybe it is, if you could sell it. I mean, and I just, it's a very small pool of people that do collectibles, and you got to know who those people are. And I've been in business for 10 years, and I don't know many people. It's so I did, and I haven't been asked. I know no one calls our phone and says, hey, I'm really looking for this 1879 gold coin, and it's a Carson City or whatever, and I want to pay. Nobody really does that. It doesn't mean it's not out there, but I'd be really careful. I think it's a good time to buy some of the pre 1933 gold. If you know the right people, then you're not paying too much. That's always a good. American pre-1933 gold is always a good play. I like the $5, $10, and $2.50 Indians too. Those are just really iconic looking and beautiful coins. And right now you can still get them for closer to the melt price, which is insane right now.
Well, it's kind of like, I guess, the comic book thing. I had a lot of. I guess I learned how to reading comic books. That's how my mom would keep me busy before I started school. And so I've got a lot of really old comic books, and some of them are supposed to be pretty valuable, but you got to find somebody who's going to pay that for it, right? That's the real issue. That's any kind of collectible, whether you're talking about, and you got to get it graded so somebody, independent party, has certified, what this thing is, the condition it's in. And so you always get into that with collectibles. And I guess my bigger question would be, if society breaks down, how do you evaluate the purity of gold if you're not a dealer? When somebody gives you a piece of gold, you got the capability to do that. But how does an ordinary person evaluate that this isn't a slug that is coated in something if you're trying to exchange with somebody else, right?
Well, I would, you can cheaply get a coin book, off Amazon. That'd be a great place to start. Just the 2026 guide to U.S. coins. That's a good place because you can look, especially if it's not bullion. You can see, how much it weighs, what it would be worth in that climate. And then, a few things that you could get a rare earth magnet for a few dollars. And that's easy, like a little rectangle, get a rare earth magnet, make sure it doesn't pull the magnet. That's one way to do it. And then weighing it. Weight is really important. It's like the diameter and the weight. Now they have some really good fakes now. And if this was a post dollar system and I was bartering, I'd make sure that I stayed in small denominations. I wouldn't take a 1 ounce gold unless I could verify it myself, unless there was some verification process. But if you stuck to the smaller stuff, that's why I think that.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, your audio cut out there for a moment.
Oh, did it? I'm sorry about that.
You were saying if you stick to the smaller stuff, you're okay in terms of
smaller stuff would be much better. And I do believe too that that's where the pre-1965 U.S. silver would become very valuable because it's hard. I mean, there's very few fakes of those. They do fake them, but you can generally tell about the weight and the patina and like the look of them. So that's where that would come in. Really handy to have a good stock of pre-1965 silver.
That's really important to know. Yeah. I'm looking at this article here. Mike Every of Rabobank is saying exactly the opposite of Jerome Powell. He says, the gold move is a vote of no confidence in the entire global financial architecture. Yeah, it's much bigger than just the Federal Reserve. Ray Dalio said the same thing. It is a global situation, and nothing is changing about any of that. It's only going to get worse, and it's going to get worse at an increasing rate, I think, that we're going to see, Tony. So, it's very important for people to understand that. Anything else you want to tell us about what's happening at Wise Wolf Gold this week, besides the snow and got snow and you got rapidly accelerating prices? It's a difficult environment to work in, isn't it?
It was kind of a blessing to have a few days for my crew, especially. They've been, I'm really proud of them. They've been stretched to their limits, to try and balance stuff and do packing and all the rest. So we're going to dip our toe back into the water officially today. We'll see how things go, but just keeping the doors open. I think this, we've got wonderful customers. We appreciate your audience, and it's gonna balance out, I think, and hold for a little while. Very soon, there'll be some sort of profit taking and other things, but I think we're in a territory where patience will serve you well.
That's right.
Making any sort of I think big moves right now as far as selling or anything. I think if you can afford it, I would.
Because it's not just that's what we've been telling people for the longest time. It's not just one thing. Right? If it's just one thing, that one thing could change very quickly. But it's a whole constellation of multiple things that are coming together all at once and creating this perfect storm for the monetary system. And it is the time that we live in, no doubt about it. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you, Tony. And I know the people who have done business with you are very happy at this point that they've done business with you. And have a portion of your wealth that's going to be diversified into something that has been stable. And it's not that gold is getting unstable or silver is getting unstable when we see the prices changing. That is really, as we've pointed out, that's a reflection of what you're pricing gold and silver in being unstable, whether it's the U.S. dollar or some other currency. And so what we're looking at here when we see these dollar values changing so rapidly, it's kind of like a hyperinflation. You got a loaf of bread, and all of a sudden, you got to have a lot more simoleons to get that bread. It doesn't mean the bread is appreciating in value like that, but it's that the currency is going down, and that's really what we're seeing here. A lot of different things coming together, and again, I only see it getting worse once Trump gets hold of the Federal Reserve. He is an agent of chaos, and people are going to be scared to death about what he's going to do, whether he does anything or not with it. But I expect him to do something with it. So we'll see.
I do too. I think it's a foregone conclusion, and I think the market's already starting to somewhat price that in.
Well, it's always great talking to you. Thank you so much, Tony. And again, you can go to davidknight.gold, and that'll take you to Tony at Wise Wolf Gold, and let him know that you came through us. Thank you, Tony. Great to talk to you.
Thank you, David. Yes, sir.
All right, folks, we're going to take a real quick break, and we will be right back. Stay with us.
using free speech to free minds. It's the David Knight Show.
Well, again, as we were talking about ICE, there's an interesting quote from G.K. Chesterton, and to paraphrase, he says, "Don't tear a fence down unless you understand why it was put up in the first place." I think that needs to be the motto for the entire Trump administration, the Trump cons. They're out there busy tearing down fences everywhere. These people who say that the border is so sacrosanct, they don't care about any boundaries of law. They don't care about any internal boundaries on what they do. And that's a very dangerous thing. As they point out in this World Magazine article, it said, conservatives should be well acquainted with the problems associated with expanding government power, you would think, wouldn't you? In the service of, quote unquote, extraordinary circumstances. And again, that's why I say we can't call these people in the Trump administration conservatives. Politico labels them as conservatives, but there's something else, just like we made the distinction about neocons and people who are not conservatives in the traditional sense of the word. They want to have wars everywhere. These are Trump cons, and I think we're starting to see a particular pattern with them to understand that there's something very, very different. And as they point out in this, it's just recent history, they say in the World Magazine article, that quote-unquote well-meaning public officials severely restricted civil liberties to address various COVID-related quote-unquote emergencies. And again, if you understand what was happening there, that's why I reacted so strongly and so quickly to what was happening with Venezuela, what was happening in Minnesota and other places like that. This is a harbinger of things to come. It is a pattern of behavior that we've seen from Trump between two different administrations. And so they went on to say, we've spent a large part of the last 2 decades lamenting the leaders who give lip service to free speech and to religious freedom, only to become enemies of the same when they were found to be offensive or discriminatory. The very reason the founders enumerated fundamental rights in the Constitution was because they understood the necessity of bright lines that cannot be crossed, regardless of circumstances, regardless of you labeling something an emergency. Political leaders are adept at explaining why freedom must be limited. They always do it with assurances that this restriction is going to be very narrow and very short-lived, and it is entirely for our own good and our own safety. But we ought to always be skeptical about that. That's why I said, especially when it is a government-created problem like the border, and they offer you an authoritarian solution, like the tactics of ICE that we see now. So when the government looks for reasons to make it easier to break into somebody's house or to make an arrest, we should think long and hard about what that could mean before we give that a green light. And again, remember the outrage that conservatives had when Trump's house, Mar-a-Lago, was searched. They don't care about you, right? It's outrageous. Look at that. They searched his house. It's like, I understand that was lawfare. But I said at the time, well, at least he didn't get a no-knock SWAT team raid. At least they didn't come in throwing flashbang grenades into babies' cribs and things like that, which we've seen. That's the treatment that many ordinary people, especially the poor people, get in this country. America is so committed to the dignity of every person that we give rights to people who break our laws when they enter our country and who break other laws once they're here. Yeah, we pay a price for that, but we get something as well for that. Because we treat people well even when they don't deserve to be treated well, it assures us that we will be treated well when we deserve it. You see, it's not just a pragmatic thing. This is a Christian value. This is why they get it in this Christian publication. And I've said for the longest time, we give rights to people, right? We don't give these rights to them. God gives them to them. And we get into trouble and I've had a lot of people get very angry with me. I've had a lot of angry stuff said to me when I defended due process for foreign citizens who are here illegally. You understand that we possess our rights not because of some privilege, even if it be the privilege of government-granted citizenship, right? Government-defined citizenship. I have the rights that I have, and you have the rights that you have because we are created in the image of God. And we need to understand that. And when a government can disregard those God-given rights for other people who have who committed crimes. This is why even when we get a slew of witnesses and video from 5 or 6 different angles, we don't immediately go out and execute somebody. We go through a very lengthy process of trials and things like that because we want to make sure that everybody has that due process, even if we know that they are guilty. And it's a pretty foregone conclusion. We still go through the exercise. Everybody deserves that. Criminals deserve it. People who have violated the law coming here as illegals deserve it because you and I deserve it. And if we don't give them the God-given rights that they possess as human beings, those God-given rights will be taken away from us by a government that doesn't respect humanity. And that's what we see in this government. They don't respect law because they don't respect humanity. They treat everybody that they disagree with. They treat somebody, if they're from Venezuela or if they have immigrated here, they treat everybody that is not someone that is part of their club, part of their tribe. Everyone is treated with contempt. This is why I have such a big problem with War Pete and the church that he attends. Somebody needs to talk to that guy. There needs to be some discipline about that because it's about us being human beings here. Again, the story that we showed earlier, the height of close combat weaponry is on this woman's doorstep. Federal agents are using the instruments of war, fine-tuned and perfected for killing at short range. And again, the weapons of defense abroad, James Madison said, are always used as instruments of tyranny at home. Always, and we're seeing it again now. So again, 7 or 8 dangerous Barney Fife clowns lined up on our doorstep, all of them like they are in battle in Iraq or Afghanistan. And actually, this is an article written by Thomas Gibbons Neff, who was deployed twice to Afghanistan as a Marine. Said images of immigration crackdown in Minneapolis across the U.S. have been likened to those from the country's wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Helmets, camouflage. Why do you need camouflage in an American city? Somebody explain that to me. It only makes you stand out if you got a bunch of white suburban houses or something, right? So helmets, camouflage, and tactical gear all look straight from the battlefield. Nowhere is that more important than that single photo that was in that article, taken on January 11th by the Associated Press. A line of federal agents on the doorstep of a woman's home, rifles in hand, and probably some of them pointing at her. The agent's equipment tells its own story. Their gear is the physical manifestation of decades of war, fine-tuned and perfected for close-quarter killing over myriad operations in faraway lands, now wielded in broad daylight in American cities. This equipment is often reserved for SWAT and hostage rescue units, which is why I say, we look at something like a hostage rescue unit. Lon Horiuchi, the FBI sniper who was part of the hostage rescue unit, what'd he do? He shot Vicki Weaver right between the eyes as she was holding a baby. Randy Weaver's wife. That was point blank for somebody who was a sniper. He was so close. There was no excuse for that. What did our government do? Well, that happened under the George H.W. Bush administration, and the same people were involved with Waco right after the beginning of the Clinton administration. They got medals. Let me tell you. Same thing's going to happen with these guys in Minnesota. Point blank murder, armed with a baby in their hands. Well, again, the other thing that we're seeing here is the attack on gun rights. Alex Pretty's death widens a split between Trump and gun rights groups, says Reason. Federal officials suggesting that carrying a firearm is inherently threatening and an invitation to police violence. Like I say, this is nothing new. This has always been the position of New York City Democrat Donald Trump. He has never appreciated firearms. I think just like Scott Bessent, who went on with Jonathan Karl the other day, I think Neither of them had ever touched a gun. It's like, have you been, he asked Jonathan Karl, the reporter, Bessent asked him, have you ever been to a protest and carrying a gun? And the other guy's like, oh, I've never even been to a protest. And of course, Bessent, always protected with an army of private bodyguards who are armed to the teeth. They have no appreciation of what self-defense is for the rest of the people. And so federal officials are describing this Preddy guy as a domestic terrorist, a would-be assassin who wanted to do maximum damage and to massacre law enforcement. Those are quotes. The only evidence to support these characterizations is the fact that he was carrying a concealed handgun, which he was legally allowed to do. As I said before, he complied with a lot of laws that I don't think are constitutional. When you look at these carry things, I don't carry a gun if I were to go through New Jersey or New York or something like that. I would never take a gun with me going up there. That's why I don't go up there. Stay away from those places. Although videos of the incident show Preddy never drew the weapon, let alone threatened the agents with it, several officials portrayed his exercise the constitutional right to keep and bear arms as inherently suspicious. These officials are Trump cons. People who do not know or appreciate the rule of law or constitutional rights, protected rights. So the Homeland Security said on Saturday that he approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Therefore, he is a terrorist, right? They neglected to mention that the agents didn't see the holstered gun until after they tackled him, and the officers attempted to disarm him, but the armed suspect violently resisted, said DHS, omitting the fact that the agent had removed the gun by the time the shooting started. And even worse, if you look at the guy who does some of the initial shooting, pulls out his gun first, right, pointing it at his back, he's watching the gun being taken away. So there's no excuse for any of this stuff. They're trying to come up with an excuse and pinning it on the SIG that has been reported to accidentally misfire. And of course, that is a real thing that has happened. That's not what happened here. And he's carried this, says his ex-wife, for several years. He's been carrying this gun. And he's been in fights with the police carrying guns with this, as we saw with the recently surfaced yesterday BBC clip. You could see that he had the gun stuck in his waistband behind him, and it didn't go off then either. Kash Patel, what an amazing, I would say, disappointment for the MAGA people. He's got to be. I never thought that he would be that good in this position, but they thought it was going to be great. Look at this. We got Kash Patel. We got Dan Bongino. Well, Bongino's out of this now, but Kash Patel claimed that his possession of a handgun was illegal. Quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of a protest that you want," he said. "You don't have a right to break the law." Well, it's not breaking the law. And you do have a right to carry a firearm for your protection. And as I said before, hundreds of people at the Alamo protest that were armed, openly carrying, because the purpose of the protest was to talk about changing the carry laws in Texas to make them align more with the Constitution. So everybody there, except for those of us who were shooting cameras, everybody else was carrying rifles. So again, this guy, Bill Essayli, the first assistant U.S. attorney for the Central District of California, I talked about this yesterday, said, if you approach law enforcement with a gun, there's a high likelihood they'll be legally justified in shooting you. Don't do it. And that's the point at which Gun Owners of America, and now even the National Rifle Association has jumped in, said they call the comments dangerous and wrong. So their statement was not nearly as strong as Gun Owners of America, but at least they did finally say something. Trump did not explicitly say that he invited his own death by carrying a gun, but he did portray that conduct as troubling. He said, I don't like it when somebody goes into a protest and he's got a very powerful, fully loaded gun with 2 magazines. Well, again, he's been carrying that for quite some time. He went through all of the unconstitutional legal loopholes that they put out there. I would call them entrapments, but he did all that stuff. So Trump is avowedly committed to, quote unquote, protecting Second Amendment rights, said his Justice Department. How can anybody believe that? If you believe that, you're not paying attention. He's done more to set precedents of gun control than any other Republican president in my life. Not even close. So these Trump cons are basically just Democrat wolves in conservative clothing. Getting back to what can we really do about this? And I mentioned this at the beginning of the program. Joe Scarborough said he was struck that he would agree with Sean Hannity on ICE. He said what Sean Hannity is saying, most Americans believe that. And Joe Scarborough says, because remember, before he got on with Mika Brzezinski, he used to be a Republican, and he said, back in the 90s, I was saying the same thing. So what is it that Sean Hannity said? Well, he said, these are people that, he goes, when they're going in and raiding places like Home Depot, Sean Hannity said a responsible program should come forward. He said, raids on stores are not a good idea. He said, undocumented immigrants working there are not the immediate problem. It's absolutely right. They're not typically the rapists and so forth and so on. If you want to go after rapists, why don't you get the Epstein list? Department of Justice. Put ICE on that. So he suggested a program could be to offer to those who come forward, people who've come here illegally, and again, they violated the law, but it's a misdemeanor, come forward, tell us that you're here, we'll pay your way home. We'll pay for you to fly back home, and then you can apply to get back into the country legally. And we'll give that consideration, the fact that you want to try to get legal again. Sean Hannity said, I think that'd be a much more responsible, reasonable way to deal with this problem. And again, I would say no welfare. No welfare magnet. Even for legal immigrants, if you want to come to this country, show that you can support yourself, that you have the ability to support your family as well, that you want to be an American not because you want free stuff, but because you want freedom.
And the other thing is dealing with what is the immediate problem, which is the massive amount of illegal immigrants that get arrested and then just let go after they commit a rape or murder or whatever.
Excellent
allegedly.
Point. Yeah, reform our own justice system, so-called. Because over and over again, they brag about, oh, look at this. We just arrested this person that had done this 24 times, right? Whatever the violent crime is, rape or robbery or murder or whatever. Probably not murder, but close to it. You pick your crime.
Even murder. I
That's
mean,
right.
There's
They've had
lots
murders
of cases where they commit what is clearly a murder and then they get let off with basically no bail.
That's right. And so they said, look at this. These people are roaming the street. Ask yourself, why are they roaming the street? When we have the American government has already identified them as being suspects in a crime. Why would they be let go?
But ICE is busy going to Home Depot rather than going to the police departments to get them as they're being processed. They've already had their IDs taken at this point. Mm-hmm. They have had their identity papers checked.
That's right. Yeah, you talk about low-hanging fruit. You go to the courthouses or the places where they are processing the immigration. So these people are applying. They get a green card or whatever. They're trying to comply with the law, admittedly well after the fact, but still they go there and start arresting people. These are not criminals in the true sense of the word. I mean, they've committed a crime coming in over the border, but the real crime is the welfare system, and you need to stop that. Scarborough played back the clip of Sean Hannity, and he said, yeah, this is what I've championed all along since I was a Republican congressman. He said, it struck me because I had that position when I was a congressman back in 1994. And I'm struck that the administration didn't begin with that. How about, we'll help you to voluntarily deport yourself. And then let's cut the welfare magnet, and then let's take a look at the people who are coming in. No, they don't start with that. Instead, they want this policy of confrontation. They deliberately want conflict. That's what's going on here. And their agenda doesn't have anything to do with protecting the borders. Their agenda is to take down all of the boundaries of law. Understand that. That's the real agenda. He said most Americans believe that if you're here illegally, you should be deported. As Sean Hannity said, People have been talking about this for years. Give people money to go back home. Then have these people reapply to come back to America. You get in line with all people from all over the world that are applying and try to do this the correct way. But if you've been in America for a long time, if you've been a law-abiding citizen, not citizen, but if you've been law-abiding, if you're an asylum seeker, certainly if you've had children that are here that have served in the military, you should be at the front of the line. But, leave the country and come back in. We'll put you at the front of the line for some of those considerations. He said, what's very unfortunate for this country and politically unfortunate for the administration and for Republicans is that it's taken them this long to express this publicly in the face of some violent tactics over the past 6 to 9 months. I just want to repeat this because I don't think I know Republicans watch this, and I don't think they listen sometimes to what I'm saying. No, they don't. Who watches Joe Scarborough anymore? Only his tribe. But they go, Joe's a lefty, so I'm not going to watch this. So I said, but I've been saying this from the very beginning. So now it's a good thing that Sean Hannity is saying this. So looking at this from the outside, the Mirror in the UK says there's 4 areas where Trump has got a real problem. And he is being heckled, ridiculed, and embarrassed in these 4 different areas. They said Trump's second term is rapidly unraveling, with dissent spreading beyond his critics to senior Republicans and furious MAGA voters. And he is in many cases being heckled by his own supporters. And this just happened on Tuesday night in Iowa, a place that has been a stronghold for Trump and for the Trump cons. His own supporters angry over rising prices, over broken economic promises, over the killing of U.S. citizens by his immigration goon squads, and also over the Epstein stuff, which hangs over everything. I've seen some people say, well, the Epstein stuff is a distraction. No, it's not. It's central to all of this. It really is, especially from the MAGA people who were told for a very long time, Trump is out there, he's rounding up all these pedophile rings and everything. Then they find out that he's actually one of the heads of the pedophile rings. And when you look at, Trump doesn't believe that it's a distraction or a hoax either. Look at how hard they have worked to keep this concealed. Look at how much political capital they have expended to keep this concealed. And so you have to ask yourself, when he's gotten this much criticism for keeping the Epstein information and protecting these predators that were part of this club that he was a part of, when he works so hard for that, takes so much criticism for it, you got to ask yourself, how much more is in there? How much worse? It's got to be much worse than the bad criticism that he's getting right now if that were to be made public. And so the 4 areas he's talking about here, of course, are the ICE shootings and the MAGA revolt, especially because of the anti-Second Amendment position that we clearly see now is the core belief of these Trump cons. People like Trump, at their core, people like Trump, this Soros guy, Scott Bessent, that he made Secretary of the Treasury, these people at their core are no different from Chuck Schumer when it comes to the Second Amendment. No different whatsoever. They despise and fear people who have guns if they're not under their command. So, again, the people like Pee Wee German, Stephen Miller, they point out these people immediately cast Preddy as a violent threat, smearing him in ways that have since been contradicted by video evidence and eyewitness accounts, and efforts to justify the killing by absurd lies and character assassination, which is what we always see. They really discredited themselves. And then the Greenland gambit. Big talk and little return. I would say zero return. It's kind of interesting. There was a movie that came out. I looked at it and I kind of remembered it from my childhood, how disappointed I was in the Peter Sellers movie. And I saw the pictures of it. I saw these guys in armor and they had spears and bows and arrows. And I thought this was going to be pretty good. I was like 4 years old. But it was really, it was way over my head. The mouse that roared, right? And basically, I'll play the short little trailer for you to give you the idea of it. It's a small country that declares war with America. We've kind of reversed this whole thing with the Trump administration. We've gone from the mouse that roared. Trump has become the mouth that roared.
Why is the smallest country on Earth declaring war against the United States?
There isn't a more profitable undertaking for any country than to declare war on the United States and to be defeated. No sooner is the aggressor defeated than the Americans pour in food, machinery, clothing, technical aid, and lots of money for the relief of its former enemies. We must declare war on the United States.
I'm Field Marshal and Chief Constable Tully Bascom, and you're prisoners of war.
I know it'll come as a surprise, a pleasant one, I hope, but we thought of one.
Blithering idiot. And what are they going to do now?
How am I going to tell the president that we've been successfully invaded by a bunch of 15th century Europeans?
Oh dear. This is most terribly complicated.
Peter Sellers, and Peter Sellers in the comedy classic, The Mouse That Roared.
Yeah, and that little mouse has got a crown just like Trump. Really, he has been the mouth that roared. He's done this in reverse. He decided and threatened this little tiny country, and he didn't get anything out of it that he didn't already have. He had the treaty that let him put military bases there. It was, as they point out here, one of the most farcical moments of his presidency. A stunt that landed with a thud and was laughed off from Copenhagen to Brussels. Vague talk of strategic interests produced precisely nothing beyond diplomatic eye-rolling and quiet embarrassment for Washington. The episode became a neat reflection of deeper doubts about Trump's grasp of foreign policy. The White House billed this as tough, visionary, deal-making, looking instead like amateur geopolitics, wildly out of step with reality. Allies reacted with cool disdain, while polls at home showed scant public support, underlining how detached the idea was from the concerns of most Americans. And I would say, and how detached from reality it was. Worse still, the Greenland sideshow strained already brittle relations with NATO partners and European governments, fueling fresh rows and diplomatic friction. Instead of producing strength, Trump weakened America's standing, turning a supposed power play into another self-inflicted wound on the world stage. It's difficult to tell the difference between, in the Trump administration, between geopolitics and ego politics. And that's just by moving that G that stands for Greenland. Anyway, economic gripes then, as we see tariffs, inflation continuing, and Trump lying to your face about the prices that you're paying everywhere. So again, the economy is always a big part of it. But then the Epstein files, as they point out in this article from the Mirror, the single biggest threat. And I agree with that. I mean, the royal family is a lot more experienced in terms of dealing with PR issues and optics, whatever, your opinion of them is. They've had a lot of experience that, and they needed that kind of experience because of the way the royal family is. But they were quick to do damage control with Prince Andrew. Not so with the Trump administration. I mean, they went in exactly the opposite direction. Instead of trying to distance himself from all this and trying to be as transparent as possible, he tried to be as opaque and hidden, again, with the blatant, obvious lies. Oh, it's all a hoax type of stuff. So one motive looms over Trump's presidency: distraction. Critics argue the rolling crises, the ICE crackdowns, the foreign policy stunts, and the culture war flare-ups are self-created for a single reason: to drag attention away from the overdue release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Well, it's not the single reason. I mean, that is his mode of operation always, because he comes from a professional wrestling background. Those documents pose the greatest threat to Trump. Despite bipartisan legislation mandating disclosures, the administration has been accused of delaying and obstructing the process, with less than 1% released so far. A drip feed that has only fueled claims of a cover-up. At stake are more than 1 million files and renewed scrutiny of Trump's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Again, when you look at all that this has cost him, and he thinks that it's worth it to pay that price, you got to imagine just how damaging the truth would be when it comes out. Trump's presidency is not imploding in a single dramatic moment. It is rotting in plain sight. The coalition that carried him to power is splintering. Its cracks are widened by infighting over ICE brutality, foreign policy blunders, a grinding cost of living crisis, and the toxic shadow of the Epstein files. What once passed for control now looks like chaos colliding from every direction. This is no longer a presidency that is shaping events. It is one that is lurching from crisis to crisis, forever on the back foot. The man who promised strength and dominance is reduced to damage limitation, frantically trying to smother backlash, to shore up shrinking base, and to spin away from scandal. With the November midterms closing in, Trump's grip on power looks weaker by the day, and the consequences of failure have never been clearer. I think it is going to be a big sea change. As a matter of fact, this article from Futurism says even Palantir staff are now disgusted with ICE. They're writing, this is an internal meeting that they had, and people took notes of it. And as people criticized Palantir's role in what was happening with ICE, you got to look at this and say, did they not do due diligence before they signed on to this company? Did they not know what this company was really about? One of the people said, in my opinion, ICE are the bad guys, and we're helping them. And
on the other hand, though, I feel like the people of Palantir are like, wait a minute, we were signing up to press Americans, not non-Americans.
That's right. So as Futurism says, well, you don't under any circumstances say you got to hand it to Palantir, a company known for its AI surveillance and its battlefield tech, and whose CEO, Alex Karp, has mused about legalizing war crimes. But you have to admit, it's pretty striking to hear that even some of the company's own employees are starting to feel disgusted about ICE and what they see happening here, the brutal crackdown. After federal agents shot and killed Alex Petty on Saturday, some Palantir employees began openly questioning the work the company was doing with Homeland Security. One said, in my opinion, ICE are the bad guys, and I'm not proud of the company I enjoy working for so much part of this. He said,
nobody tell them what they're doing with IDF.
That's right. Yeah. Ignorance is bliss, isn't it? This is somebody who obviously doesn't watch our program or any other news if they don't realize what Palantir is doing. Says that thinking pragmatically, is the reputational damage that we're taking for being associated with them worth it? What if the next administration will be Democratic and they cut all the contracts with us? You know, he should think about the reputational damage that he'll have as a software engineer working for Palantir. Would anybody else want to hire somebody like that? I don't know. So we needed to have an understanding of our involvement here, said another one. The protests were raised in a company-wide Slack channel that was dedicated to discussing news items. Many of the posts that were either critical of ICE or questioned Palantir's involvement with the agency received dozens of upvotes in the form of emojis. So Wired is the one that broke this story. They underscored how the sentiment was far from being fringe and that the unrest was out in the open. Some employees even wondered if Palantir could help put an end to what they were reading about in the news. Again, they don't have any idea of who they're working for. This is just the tip. You know, this ICE thing is just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Can Palantir put any pressure on ICE at all, wrote one employee. I read stories of folks rounded up who were seeking asylum with no order to leave the country, no criminal record, and consistently checking in with authorities. Literally no reason to be rounded up like this. Surely we aren't helping them do that.
The ignorance of these people is astonishing. Like, to say that, it sounds like he means well. He's just so stupid as to not realize that he is the bad guys. Hans, we are the baddies.
That's right. Yeah, you talk about ultimate compartmentalization there. That's amazing. Palantir and ICE have deep ties. A 404 Media scoop earlier this month described how Palantir was secretly providing ICE a tracking tool called Elite to scour Medicaid data and other government sources to create a map of people it could potentially deport, generating a dossier for each person that included where they live. Palantir was also awarded a $30 million contract to build ICE and Immigration OS to provide near real-time visibility on people self-deporting from the country, and also worked on updating the agency's database so it can be complete target analysis of known populations. So again, we have this situation where Notice how long it took them to get to the Somali fraud, right? This was known going back to 2018. We were doing reports about this stuff. And yet that wasn't the first place that the Trump administration went. But now it is their number one priority after there was a report about it. But they knew about it, just like Waltz knew about it, just like Emmer, the number 3 Republican in the House, all knew about it. But they didn't do anything about that crime. And the thing that you would do about that crime doesn't have anything to do with going door to door picking up people. That is a white-collar crime investigation type of thing. Eventually there would be arrests, but they're not anywhere close to that point yet. In response to the protests on Slack, Palantir's Civil Liberties team updated its internal wiki with a breakdown on its work with ICE, arguing that the technology is making a difference in mitigating risks while enabling targeted outcomes. And so people are saying, well, wait a minute. We heard that they're making this database, and we had this situation where, and we've shown you the video of it, the guy goes up to somebody who's filming them and says, you're now in the database, right, as a terrorist. They said, are we doing that? Hans, are we the bad guys putting in this database that's tracking people who are protesting what we don't have a problem with? And so that is the reality of where this is. And again, they have no idea what is going on with it. There was an interesting back and forth with a former Trump, the former general counsel from the first Trump administration for Homeland Security. He went on with Jake Tapper. His name is Chad Mazel. And he starts making all of these accusations about, and its characterizations, these mischaracterizations and lies. And I thought it was a great comeback from, of all people, fake Jake Tapper. He's done a couple of these that are good. And he says, oh, wait a minute, you do realize, after you say that, you do realize that there's video out there that shows that everything that you were saying is a lie. And it's like, finally, it's time that somebody said that. And it was Jake Tapper who said it. You do realize that there's multiple videos of this that show that everything that you said is a lie. And that's kind of where we are at this point in time with these guys. So, the final thing is that first video that came out where the woman was, what the F were you doing and everything. She said, she went on with Anderson Cooper and she said, yeah, I really regret that I used the F word so much, but I was just so angry I couldn't control it. And she said, the thing that made her angry about it was she said, I remember the feeling inside my body. I remember, of course, I wish I wasn't saying that word so often. But at the same time, that's how angry I was. And I don't know if anger is the right word to use. She said I was mortified the way I was feeling and helpless. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I knew he was gone because I watched it. And then they come over to try to perform some type of medical aid by ripping the clothes open with scissors and then maneuvering his body around like a rag doll, only to discover that it could be because they wanted to count the bullet wounds to see how many they got, like he's a deer. And so she points that out. And as a matter of fact, the physician, who was a pediatrician, he was not one of the protesters. He heard all this commotion and everything. He was watching from his window in a nearby apartment building. And he, when he saw the shooting, then he ran down and downstairs and out of the building. And he goes over and says, I'm a physician. They wouldn't let him come because, well, where's your identity papers, right? Oh, they're not Gestapo at all, are they? Anyway, they eventually patted him down and let him get there. And that was his comment. He said, they're just flipping him over, counting body wounds. So we've had 2 people say that. 2 witnesses have said that. That's all they're interested in. Anyway, after he gave what aid he could and they took the body away, he went back into his apartment building. But he said, we had to leave the area and go go somewhere else because there was so much tear gas that was getting into his apartment building there. What were you going to say, Lance?
They had to verify that he was a real physician. Think of all the damage that a fake physician would have done to that dying man if they hadn't done their due diligence to make sure that he was telling the truth.
Yeah, maybe he's not on board with the pediatrician's vaccine schedule, right? Yeah, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the pediatrician's vaccine schedule. It's very interesting to see that there has been a RICO lawsuit that's been put in by Children's Health Defense and another organization saying that there is criminal collaboration between the CDC and the American Academy or Association of Pediatricians, the AAP. I don't know what that second A stands for. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
As the rain and the snow falls down from the heavens and waters the earth and seed, so the words of my mouth will not return empty, but do what I purpose and lead you in peace. Come to me, all you who thirst, come and drink the living water. Let those without money still purchase and drink. Listen carefully to me, that your soul may live forever. Your soul will delight in what I have to give. As the rain and the snow falls down from the heavens and waters the earth and sea, so the words of my mouth will not return empty, but do what I purpose and lead you in peace. Oh, that we might know the Lord, let us follow through to know Him. He'll come like the spring rains that water the earth. As the rain and the snow falls down from the heavens and waters the earth and seed, so the words of my mouth will not return empty, but do what I purpose and lead you in peace. Seek the Lord while He is near. Call on Him and He'll have mercy. His thoughts are not your thoughts, His ways not like yours. Call on Him while He is near, for He said He'll freely pardon. Sinner, turn from your ways, turn toward me. As the rain and the snow falls down from the heavens and waters the earth and seed, so the words of my mouth will not return empty, but do what I purpose and lead you to me.
All right, welcome back. Before we get in, I'll get into the details of the RICO stuff next week. But I wanted to talk before we run out of time here about what happened with Ilhan Omar yesterday. As some people referred to it, they said this is like a bad SNL skit, Saturday Night Live, except I guess in this case it was Somalia Night Live. And this was an alleged attack. And I find myself in the strange position of agreeing with Donald Trump for once. He came out and said he thought it was all fake. This is like Sean Hannity and Joe Scarborough agreeing on something, and so I think it does look very, very fake. Lance was the first one to see this, and he said, "Have you seen this? It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen." You got a guy in the audience who is kind of a bit dodgy looking and everything, and the camera is focusing in on him. It looks like she glances in his direction a couple of times, and then kind of gives a nod. He jumps up and he sprays her with something. And everybody around her is like freaking out, thinking that it's some kind of a hazardous material. They brought in the hazmat people. They discovered that it was apple cider vinegar. One of the people that was there with her said, "It was horrible. I went outside and I had to throw up." I don't know. It's like, have you ever had that response to apple cider vinegar? It's not that bad. But anyway, I had this, this was a picture that somebody sent. We were laughing about it. We said, yeah, she should have jumped up and said, "Fight, fight, fight." Well, one person basically did that, put a banana in her hand as she is, even had the people around her, like Secret Service agents, hustling her off. And you see one person with a spray bottle spraying her, and the Somali flag in the background. So I thought, well, let's just drop this into Grok and animate it. Fight, fight! Fight, fight, fight! Yeah, there we go. Fight, fight, fight. That's it.
Yeah, the thing is, it starts out, so she's giving her speech, and this guy's calmly waiting for his cue. She glances up at him for a moment, and then resolutely looks back down at her podium. She glances at him while he's still seated perfectly still. I don't have the video here. I thought I had it, but he's seated perfectly still. And then she looks down resolutely at her notes and doesn't look at him again as he's getting up and walking toward her. She's avoiding eye contact with him to show that he's not associated with her.
And he sprayed something on her, and she's not concerned enough to even wipe it off, let alone, go all the people around her. "Oh, you should get medical help. You should get medical." "No, I'm not going to be bullied into stopping my speech." And she continues on with her brave speech, just like that. Right?
Yeah. So this guy, worst acting ever. He's like jiving around like the fawns and going. The comment that she made right before this was, "And we have to impeach Kristi Noem." And it's like, "We aren't getting rid of Kristi Noem." And he says something else and sprays her. And then she, immediately, as he's still talking, marches straight up to him and smacks him ineffectively before the security guards come and tackle him. And then walks over to the podium and tries to continue her speech. And then the people that weren't in on it are all saying, no, you got to go get this checked out. You might have been sprayed with anything. You don't know what happened. And, any logical thing, if this was, it could have been acid for all they know. Yeah. So she's like, no, that's what he wants. I got to finish my speech.
Well, it was slightly acidic, apple cider vinegar. But I think that was a real tip-off. No, you can't get rid of Kristi Noem. I mean, there is literally nobody in this country that supports Kristi Noem. Even the people who support the ICE actions don't support Kristi Noem. It's one of the most ridiculous things it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Where's Groucho Marx when we need him? Yes, it is theater, isn't it? Theater from both sides. And here we are stuck in the middle. These people get crazier and crazier every day. Well, that's it for our show today. We have a couple of very interesting interviews I think you're going to really enjoy tomorrow. So it'll be live. It'll be the first time we've aired these interviews. We recorded them this week. And so tune in tomorrow. You'll be able to comment with each other. And it is a new program that will be aired tomorrow, although it will be pre-recorded interviews. Thank you for joining us. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. but each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.